Welcome to Understanding Project Management Discussions. I'm Dave Barrett, and my guest today is John Loncar. Our topic is stakeholder management. I've known John for about a year now, as John teaches project management in the Building Systems Engineering program. I've always enjoyed John's unique perspective on things, which I think you'll find evident in our discussion. Please welcome John Loncar. So, hey, John, thanks for coming on. It's good to see you.
Oh, thanks, Dave. It's great to see you again. Thanks for asking me to have a coffee chat with you.
Sounds good. So our topic for today is about stakeholders and stakeholder management. And I understand when we were talking before we started, you've had a lot of experience with different stakeholder groups and so on. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I guess earlier in my career, I had a wonderful opportunity for a really kind of big project. And when you say stakeholders, I look at it two ways. There's internal stakeholders and then external. And there is a clear and distinct division between the two. Now, and they're both two totally separate populations. The internal stakeholders all depends. It all depends what you're trying to deliver. And if you actually, you know what departments you need to speak to, but you don't really have control of who represents that department. And depending on what they're doing and what's on their docket, how much time can they devote to a project? Because we're all working just as you, and in life, we have many projects we're working on concurrently at the same time. So we all have to have time.
Right. So what you're saying is you're not the center of the universe then.
Oh, in my world, yes, I am.
Yes, right. But for them, they've got a lot of other stuff on the go. And
absolutely, a whole bunch of other deliverables for people of varying, it could be for the VP, the directors, their own supervisor. So, right. And the sense of urgency is different, right, for every stakeholder.
Right. And when you said, just to define the term, so when you said internal versus external, so internal would be defined as someone who's in the same organization as you, right? Like being paid by their salary is paid by the same company as you. That's an internal stakeholder?
Absolutely. We work for the same company in a different department, in a different division, but they would have their product, let's say, is what you need. So you need to engage them to say, I need your help. This is my scope of my project. This is what I need, my end game. This is my finished product, but I need your input. And, when we spoke earlier, that could be a lot of source of angst between internal stakeholders.
Right.
When you're fighting for time and perception. Like, what's the scope? Is the scope actually conveyed properly in their language that they understand?
So what's your game plan for so you've got a bunch of internal stakeholders, and we'll get to external in a little bit. For these internal stakeholders, how do you interact with them? Like, what's your plan for how are you going to get to know them or understand them, or what's the deal there?
It's what I found. So I was new. Like, this was a rather large project, and I was kind of learning as I went as well. And so I'd have conversations, but what I did find to have a lot of traction was getting the team together in one room, because then I could speak to one department and have all the other departments listen in, and then I could have a discussion and say, this is what I need from you, but your work will depend on, right beside you, that department's outcome. So you could start to see the interconnectedness of the team to say, well, no, it's not just what I need, but it's this department needs this from you. And having that talk and saying, okay, this is why it's important. I'm not asking you to do something just to do it. There is meaning behind it. And I've always found that young learning for me, you get more from people if you can engage people.
Right.
in get their buy-in into the project, because if they don't have it, you could have a person that's going to be a wall for you and you won't get any traction. It'll be more of a deterrent. And so I've always had this kickoff meeting where I've introduced and I've tied them all together as to why they're here in the room and what they mean to each other.
Right.
And
right.
so, yeah, using that, saying, this is the band.
Right. Yeah, this is the band. Yeah. So this is sort of the higher, like this is the purpose. This is why I'm talking to you, and this is how we connect together. I've often felt that too, that when I've managed projects, that the project manager is in a unique position to see how the things tie together, like where the, where the connections are. And a lot of times stakeholders, they see their own little area, their own area, not necessarily little, but their own area, and they have that sort of a bit of a sheltered view. And that if you can sort of draw that picture for them, and you said it nicely, of get them together with shared communication, that can break down some of those barriers. That's really good.
Yeah, it's just as you said, a lot of departments, when they say, oh, jeepers, okay, another project, because their docket's already full, they have this myopic view that's very laser focused.
Yes.
And I found that if I pull them back and say, hey, this is the big scheme, don't go down this path because you don't need to. Actually, my request of you is not what you think. And that's the other part of the discussion, where in my one project, this team said, oh, I have to produce this, just as if it was, ready to go. The final product, very complex. And once I explained to them, say, no, actually, what we need right now, and this is the purpose of the team, is this level of accuracy, this level of complexity. And once I explained that, it was like, oh, okay, I can breathe now, because they start doing their own computations in their head. I have this much time. Okay, this much time in a week, this, and then they start figuring out, going, I have no time, which is always a chronic answer.
Right.
But I've always found that if you say, no, this is what I actually need. I don't need to the penny. I need to the dollar or to the $100. Like what level that what we're working at.
Right. Right. And the other thing that I've found, that is a backdrop to this, and I'm curious as to your experience with this, is that there's this thing that happens in organizations called organizational politics, which is there are factors beyond just getting the work done that is at play. It's people that are looking for promotion. Maybe they're trying to advance. Maybe they might want their area to look better or in a certain light. And there is this thing that is happening, which is politics, that isn't necessarily talked to, but is there. So have you seen that in your career? And if there is, how do you work with it? Like, what do you do?
Oh my gosh, it's forever there. It's always there, but it all depends on how prevalent
Right.
it becomes. And that speaks to how or what the profile is of this project. If it's just a little project and the politics subside there, it's not that much.
Right.
It's more, I'm tedious. But if it's a high profile project, like I've worked on projects, the biggest project I've done came out to be $100 million project, in which again, I had to manage the financials and the engineering and complete package. And so with a project of that size, politics comes out full and foremost. What I try to do is, as best as you can, is to remove the politics and to become a team. I've always found politics are always when there's an individual effort. Just as you said, someone's looking to advance, they're out for themselves. If I can turn this experience into a team, I've always found politics starts to, subside. And the way I try and do that is say, from the collective effort, we can achieve far more. And if we achieve far more, there's going to be more light put on us in which everyone can shine.
Right.
And the best thing is for advancement, it's always been, how will this person play with the others?
Right.
And if I found, again, by turning it into a team or building camaraderie. And what I've done as well to help build that is to get the team together, but not talk about the project. So let's have a lunch. Let's get to know each other.
Yeah.
And once you start to know your teammates, then you start to become like the work family. You're trying to help each other. And then okay, I can work with this person because I know their bias. They're not looking, they just want to do a good job. They're non-threatening. So again, if I can promote the team effort, remove any threats, but then again, sometimes there are people that are like that.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of things that you just, I just want to comment on a few of those. Is that you're talking about a method of influence, which is if you can show the benefits of cooperation, that instead of it being like a small pie that we're trying to carve up here, there's a big pie. It's if we work together, there's more for everyone. If you can make that case very convincingly, and you just can't say it so overtly, you've got to, it is done very elegantly. That's a tremendous way of turning people that might work against you to working with you. You've talked about team building and getting to know people and so on. So it's a real interpersonal, influence-based process. So I want to just turn to external stakeholders now and just talk about so we've talked, there's this whole group of internal stakeholders, but now there's a whole universe of external stakeholders. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's again, depending on the project, and that will dictate how many stakeholders externally that you have. And it's just as viable discussion as with the internal stakeholders, but perhaps more because now the external could be different companies or governmental agencies, depending on what the project is. Politics comes a little faster at you because now you're helping them come to a greater picture to say, okay, here's the absolute solution, but I need their help to make this project even better. And it could be, say in my case, it could be a contractor who I contracted the work out to complete my vision or the team's vision, right? But then there's also government ministries, okay? Who do we have? Oh, we have to have environmental. So we have to satisfy the needs of these external stakeholders and say, okay, here's the project. What can we do? What is intimate to you? What do you need? And I've always found that if we have that discussion at the beginning and to say, I'm here to work with you. I'm here so that, again, we can work together. We can achieve greater things. But I need to know what is near and dear to them. To say, okay, what are their inflection points? Is it better to do this then or to do it now? To see, okay, what's your timing and what's their pitfalls or what's important to them? So I've had to do work with municipalities where I've had stakeholder meetings with the mayoral council and speaking to the open public to say, this is the project, this is my impact on you, which could be good or bad. Hopefully it's always good.
Right, but it can be bad. It's not, and I think that's one of the things that I've talked about in my classes is stakeholders can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. Like they're and everywhere in between. They're not
absolutely. They could be your champion.
Yeah.
Or not so much.
Right. I often get the question, from from students as to how many stakeholders do I need? And I usually describe it as, well, it's how many there are. And so how many, what would be, what's the greatest number of external stakeholders that you had? Like generally, how many are there in this $100 million project?
Yeah, this is what I do. I learned this tactic a long time ago. And for your kickoffs, Usually what I do is I have my own scanning of the environment to say, okay, here's the topic areas. This is who needs to be involved. That's critical. You may, you try very hard to capture everyone, but every now and again, they may say, oh, you need to talk. Okay, bring them in. But for actual project stakeholders, I throw an invite out to everyone saying, this is the project, here's the scope, blah, 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 blah. I let them choose to participate or not. Now, I've also found too, if I give choice, I have higher engagement, but also because I've given them the choice. And if they negate it, I kind of have a little bit of an insurance to say, well, you were invited.
Right.
Here's the log of my discussions. Here's everything that's happened. You politely declined. There's not much I could do. Well, what I do again is there's different levels of communication. So you have your stakeholder population, and it could be large. The one I've had, including internal and external, is like 15. But not all 15 participate.
Right.
So you have to be mindful of, well, how am I going to communicate to keep them to say they're still within this project scope? And it could just be monthly updates.
Right.
And again, give them the choice whether they want to interact.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And and when you say 15, some of those would be groups, which means inside that group, there's many, individuals. They're both 15, say 15 would be individuals in some case, but in some cases are groups representing many, many people. I like your idea of that, going out and asking, because, just as a strategy, one, it maybe help identify stakeholders you didn't kind of think of.
Mm-hmm.
And two, if a stakeholder spurned who was ignored is not likely to be a friendly stakeholder,
No.
So like you say, it's your insurance policy where if they later sort of appeared or whatever, at least they would know that you reached out to them, which creates a better environment, I'm sure, down the road.
Yes, it does. And it's actually, I've had some stakeholders where the urgency wasn't there yet.
Right.
For them. I've invited them, and when time came, then they came into the fold and started participating, because now it was meaningful to them. It was at that moment in time that it's urgent.
Right. And that's the other thing that I think is sometimes hard to see when you're first starting in project management, is the realization that the environment is not static, is that it's constantly moving. The conditions are changing. So yeah, at the start of the project, the stakeholder may not be that overly concerned. By the middle of the project, they're deeply concerned. So there is the stakeholder management is constant, you're constantly taking the temperature of the room, so to speak.
Absolutely. You're always gauging, okay, what's hot, what's cold, what's happening. Also, too, with stakeholders, you can have a stakeholder as a department, but that person representing that department could change.
That's true. Yes.
And then that throws another lever into the project to say, okay, stakeholder is still present, but the representative has changed now.
Right. One of the things I curious about is that, again, when I teach this, there are, I have stakeholder documents that filled out and plans and so on, but I often say, these are ones not necessarily to be shared, in terms of your strategy for how you're going to deal with stakeholder X. That would not be public information. I'm just curious as to your processes. Do you write any of this down, or is it just, is this stuff all stored up here? What do you do with this plan?
You're absolutely right. You have your plan, and then you kind of have a public plan where you say, okay, here's my own internal notes. This is what I know of this person or this department, and I know intuitively this is how I need to manage them, or to shepherd. Could be another word.
Yes.
To shepherd them. But with the communication, I keep it strictly topical based on the project. Here are the milestones. Here's the outliers. This is what's happening. This is our next phase. I keep it very, or perhaps I'll say it this way, I don't put any emotion. There's no emotion in any of my communications. I may have my black book, my actual notebook in which I scribe my thoughts,
Right.
but I treat that as my own personal log or diary.
Right.
But for communication notes, there's no emotion. As soon as you have emotion, then there's a bias, and
Right.
that's not when you're trying to to execute a project. You need to be very factual and stepped. Okay, this is what's happening. This is where we need to be. This is where we came from. This is how we're going to get here.
Right.
Type of thing.
It's actually, I like the way you describe that, of saying those stakeholder notes of this is how I'm going to interact, is like a diary, is like a personal log where you'd say, today I need to meet with the president of the company. I know, he or she, likes to work in this way. And so I'm going to do this. Well, that's a very personal reflection that you would never share. Like a diary, diaries are generally not shared. They're personal. And so this is the unique thing about stakeholder management, is that it is done but not necessarily shared, not often or ever. I hate to say ever, because ever is so absolute, but I don't think I've ever shared with somebody, say, my plan is you're going to object, and then I'm going to provide you with a few examples and you'll come around, like you don't do that.
No, that is your own kind of in your own vault. That's the special information.
Exactly. It's in the vault. It's your act that you've got, that that's just the way you operate. So just I guess one last question is what is it, is there ever been a time when you've really wish you had done something differently with a state? Like, have you ever wanted to rewind to say, that didn't work well? Is it anything come to mind? Or if not, then that's okay. But
it's jeepers, yeah. That's I'm human. There's always going to be, when you reflect, what I like to do is a couple things. When a project comes to an end, I like to celebrate our success, because I like to acknowledge what the team and the effort and the energy we've put into. And I find that sometimes doesn't happen a lot, or it's not executed in a way of where you're just doing that I try to, acknowledge what we've done as a team, to say, okay, let's celebrate what we've done. It's very, very special. But also I like to have a postmortem to reflect back and say, okay, what didn't work well? What could we have done? And you know what? That is another lever to bring engagement, to bring the team closer together. When you ask them, okay, hey, Rob, what do you think? I know we kind of struggled here. We made it through because we had to, but if we could do it differently, this is what I'm thinking. How about you? Did you feel the same? I try to have an open conversation where I'm not very political. It's just, let's talk. How can we make this better?
Yeah, and that I like the idea of the continuous improvement, the tying into the postmortem or the lessons learned process, and even the celebration. That's an interesting one, because that's really recognizing that you're continuing to develop the relationship. Like, it's good to celebrate just in its own right. Remember, you might be working with these folks again in the future.
Yeah.
That's a point. It's a constant cultivation of the relationship, as well as your sort of reflection. Is a lot of that is reflecting again of, well, how did I work with that stakeholder and what could I do better next time, and making those little notes in your private diary. It's a constant learning. You're not going to necessarily get it right the first time. None of us are interpersonal experts that can, and humans are unpredictable in a way, but over time you learn, you
Yes.
figure it out if you're paying attention and reflect, which is part of that process that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the one thing I've tried to learn, or to be more kind of self-aware, which is in itself is a tactic. We all need to get better to be more self-aware. but to also learn the language of whom you're speaking with.
Right.
Because people take information in so many different ways. Everyone is different, where
Yeah.
some are more analytical, where you need more visual, some need written text, other, just a conversation, a chat over coffee. But if you can learn the language of that person and then detail your thoughts in a way they can receive it quicker, that would be more productive for the project, and you'll reduce a lot of potential conflict or negative energy built up within the group.
Yes. No, that's a really, and almost that, in sort of summary, if you can do that, like there is no, there's no magic way of doing this, of working with people. But if you can speak in their language, or, see things from their point of view, like, just for a moment,
Yeah.
get out of your shoes, walk over there and try on their shoes, and then go, oh, well, it looks way different over here than it did over there. If you're able to do that, whether you're dealing, like you said, in your home life, with a spouse, or in a business sense with stakeholders, wow, there's just a whole lot more. And the thing I found too, if stakeholders realize if they see you doing that, it increases trust, right? They go,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
This person is actually trying to see my point of view. That's awesome. And just like you said, the team increases communication, and it becomes it feeds off itself in terms of that. So anyways, John, this has been a great conversation. I thank you for your insights on stakeholders, stakeholder management, and identifying stakeholders. It's such an important topic. It's an underrated topic, but it is super important. One of the most important, if not the. So anyways, thank you for your time on this. It's always great chatting.
Oh, you know what? I love it. Thanks for asking me. I just love having our chats. I'm happy to help.
Always. So anyways, we'll talk to you again soon.
Take care, Dave. Bye-bye.
Bye.